Casual Magic has been brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can get cool stuff. Use the code CASUAL for 5% off your order. We're also sponsored by Quiver Time, makers of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine card holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their site for 10% off your purchase. And by Architect, a deck hosting website that doesn't sell anything, but they like me and I like them, so kindly use them for all your deck list needs. Now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam, Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Quiver, Architect, and Cool Stuff Inc. Yeah, it took me a second to get there, but I should just listen to my show because I've got the little thing in the front that just tells you. I don't know why I repeat it in the show every time, but I do. Today, my very special guest is a person I've actually been talking to for like years and years and years, and we've just never done something together, which is weird. Dana Roach, who's like one of the hosts of like the EDHREC podcast, EDHREC podcast, and like Commander Central, and like article writer, and just general bon vivant in Commander spheres, or maybe cranky old uncle in Commander, I don't know. But definitely people have an opinion about you, man, one way or the other.
That's fair.
But I'm very happy to have you on because, like, I don't know, I just really find that a lot of your thoughts on the format generally align with mine. If maybe
definitely.
a little bit more straightforward.
Possibly, yes. But no, yeah, agree. Very much so. We definitely come at it from the same space where like we're playing for the fun of the experience.
Right. Like there's this prevailing attitude, and it feels like the majority of content creators are very much about the optimization, about the getting to the top, either the vast crop of CDH. Well, CDH is different. They know what they're here for.
Yeah.
But like it feels like the so-called casual side of people are definitely like cranking higher and higher and higher. And I'm like, what if we enjoyed ourselves? Like, just
And don't get me wrong, like it's fun to
yeah,
win. I am playing
sure.
to win when I sit down, but like I want to win my way. If I'm not
Right.
winning my way, I'm not interested in winning.
Yeah. And I mean, it, the thing though, like to remind people is that it's okay not to update your deck every set. Like, it's okay to just sit on
Absolutely.
it for like a year and then just grab whatever cards came out last year. Like, I do this like every November or something. I just sit down like, what came out this year, grab them all, and then kind of like update as a batch or not. Like, who cares? Sometimes the deck is finished and you don't need more cards in it.
And I like to update. That's something I genuinely enjoy doing. I specifically set aside time when previous season is over, like that Friday when we get the full official Mothership spoilers. I specifically like bake a hour into my workday to like look at all the cards and like start making a list. But I do it because it's fun. I'm not doing it because
Yeah,
like I need to have my deck optimized. I do it
right.
because it's something I genuinely like really enjoy doing.
For me, I when we're going through preview season, I always try to be like, "Oh crap, that's gonna be a great card from my like blah deck." But I had to. What I realized is that that was forcing me to tunnel vision, and I was missing all these other cards because I kept thinking about which of the 6 decks am I building right now that this card could be perfect in, and then no other usage. And then someone's like, "Man, did you see that amazing card that came out?" And I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Like, I was building Minsk and Boo, and that's the most recent deck I built, and there was a card in the Warhammer set called All Will Be One, right? Like,
Yeah.
whenever you put a counter on it, it does damage equal to the thing, and I'm like, "Holy crap." And, like, post facto, after I finished the deck, someone's like, "Dude, did you put this in there?" I'm like, when did this card come out? And they're like, "It's literally in the box in your hand right now."
Right.
And I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah, well, and the other problem if you when you update that consistently every time a set comes out, you find yourself like you just can't see all of those cards, particularly if you have more than 4 or 5 decks. So you get to the point where your deck is filled with the cards that you've never gotten a chance to play, and you're like, "What? Do I rotate that card out for this new
That's the
thing?"
worst feeling. Oh my god. Like, I had this so there was, like, cards that I've slotted into decks. I'm like, "Okay, great. I'm gonna play this." Like, Will Health comes out, my zombie decks get a bunch of upgrades. I'm gonna slot all these cards in. Then, like, the next set comes out, and it's like, "Oh, these are better zombie cards," but I haven't even tried the
Right,
last ones.
right.
Like, I've gotten to the point where I literally have decks where I like there was a soldier that came out in March of the Machines, this mono red dude who's like I think in the jumpstart packs, and he's got like the ability you can copy a creature you control, or you can copy 5 of them and they all get haste and
Yeah.
everything. Like this guy is the most amazing soldier I've ever seen. Literally, what do I cut? There's
Right,
no
right,
room.
right.
I've skinned it to the bone, right? Like there's nothing left. And except for like cards I haven't played. And I'm like, the whole point is for me to play them. That's why I cut them
Yeah,
and put them in the damn thing in the first place. I hate that feeling so
yeah.
much.
Oh, it feels terrible.
Oh my god. But one of the things though, recently you've started this random series of like posts on the Twitter where you're like, this week is gonna be like, how does White Ramp week or whatever? And you post like a random card that's just not random, but like a forgotten or maybe just obscure card that does a very specific purpose. And I love that. Like, obviously, posting cards randomly that have some meaning is a big part of my life.
Sure, right, right.
So,
Exactly.
but I like that you at least come up with themes and ideas in terms of what it was for. It's like, why did you start doing that?
Um, that's just kinda how my brain works. I'm always looking at Magic cards, right? Like, I
Mm.
particularly when I got back into Magic about 10 years ago or so, I had taken a very long break. Um, one of the first things I did was just go through every set that had came out
Oh,
in the
geez.
interim, and not like, in one block, but, like, I
Sure.
basically picked a set a day kind of and went through most of the cards. You skip the vanilla ones or whatever, but
Yeah.
I went through everything kind of, and when I built a deck, I also kind of do the same thing. I have a handful of different weird searches I'll do trying to find cards that might work in that deck. So I have a pretty good memory, so I just remember a lot of that stuff, and it just became I got the information in my head. I want to get it out. I've got it there
Right.
anyway, so I might as well share it a little bit.
Yeah, and sometimes there's cards that people have just forgotten about that were just
Yeah,
staples like decades ago or whatever.
right.
And it's like, look, these things still work.
Yeah,
Like Weathered Wayfarer or whatever the hell is still a great card.
right.
Tithe
Exactly.
is still a great card,
Yeah,
but people just like, oh yeah, like what the hell was that? There was a white card that came out in the Strixhaven Mystical Archives. That was the White Ramp. Was that a reprint of Tithe or was
yeah.
it?
I think it was Gift of Estates. Was it? I
Yeah, Gift of
believe. Yeah,
States. That card is also great, and
yeah,
everybody had
yeah,
totally forgotten that it
yeah,
exists. Yeah, I
yeah.
love it when WotC reminds us that, like, "Hey, this thing is also cool."
Right.
Yeah. So, we should actually go back a step. So you said you came back to Magic 10 years ago? What was that during, Innistrad?
Yeah, right after Innistrad, I think. I think the first pre-release I went to when I came back was Gate Crash.
Mm,
So I want to say that was the spring of 2013, I
Jesus
believe.
Christ.
Yeah,
Y
but prior to that, the last set I had actually gotten cards from was Ice Age. So like there was I hadn't played in this giant window.
I had almost the same gap, like, between my gap was between, Visions and I played 1 draft in Rise of the Eldrazi, but I didn't really come back until End of Scars, beginning of Innistrad.
Okay,
So,
sure. So
like,
like right
almost
before
the
me.
same, like,
Yeah,
giganto window. Mind you, I still for some reason, I have no idea still, I read daily MTG every single day, even though I didn't play the game, and I had, like, no idea, and, like, I remember cracking my first pack of Rise of Eldrazi, first time I'd ever drafted on top of that, and I'm sitting there and, like, my rare is Sarkin the Mad, and I'm like, "What the hell is
right,
this? I
right,
don't understand. Does it have summoning sickness?" And
right.
they were
Exactly.
like, "No, dude, it really doesn't." And I'm like, "What? What is going on?" But yeah, like Magic is a different beast now than it used to be.
Absolutely.
But even in the last 10 years, Magic is vastly different from when we came back.
Yeah. Like, when I first played Commander, and I when I came back, I got into Commander fairly quickly. So, like, I was playing
Same.
within a few months. But, like, the concept of a win condition was to hit someone with a 4/4 while they were at 3. Like, that was what your plan was to win the game for the most part, right?
Right?
And that's not the world that we live in anymore for the most part.
Yeah. I was like, "Oh man, I'm gonna build Rafik and I'm gonna swing and build a mega exalted deck and attack one person at a time and it'll
Yeah.
be great." And I'm like, "Oh, why do I keep dying?" Oh yeah,
Yeah.
there's 3 other people at the table.
Yeah.
Uh, so, do you remember what your first commander was?
First deck I actually built, I still have, and I didn't build it with Glissa the Trader as the commander. I built it with Sapling of Kolfanor.
Mm,
I don't remember why I chose that one over Glissa, but I built a Death Touch deck. So like the first thing I put together was I'm like, I'm just going to build a commander deck with a bunch of Death Touch creatures, and I'm like, oh, but I want my commander to not die, so I grabbed Sapling of Kolfanor because it was indestructible.
right.
But very quickly, like within several games, I realized, oh, a 3/3 Death Touch first striker is really really good. So I switched it to Glissa and then tweaked the deck to do a few artifact things along the way. But I still have the deck.
You
I
must have been very
recently,
happy for Finn the Fangbearer.
yeah, Finn was super cool, and actually I just turned the commander into Glissa Sunslayer. It's the same basic deck I've been playing for 10 years for the most part.
Mm, nice. My first deck was based off of a card I cracked in my first pre-release, which was Grimgrin, and I was like, I want to build a deck around this guy, and it's my pride and joy deck. And then of course, like at Gatecrash, getting Assemble the Legion and saying like, this reminds me of my favorite card, Kaldoran Outpost. What if
Oh
I put
yeah,
them together? Let's go.
yeah,
Um, and of course I've still got those two decks together because I'm never taking that apart. Are you kidding me?
yeah.
But what brought you into Commander though?
So so I first started playing roughly when Revised came out. I had a friend that was a year older than me who went away to college, and he went to, I don't remember what school it was, but it was right by Lake Geneva where Gen Con was originally held.
Yeah,
So
home of
he
CSR.
was, yeah, so he was there when like I think Magic at the Gen Con the first year that Magic was first introduced.
Oh damn,
And
1993.
yeah, in his college, so a bunch of kids from his school and his gaming group went there too. So it was Magic was huge from the get go at the school he went to, and he came back for the summer and brought back cards and introduced all his nerd friends to Magic then, and that would have been summer of 93, 94, 94.
Yeah,
Um,
94 probably.
so revised packs were still available, so you could get revised. I managed to actually find an antiquities pack in a store at one point in time in there. Legends hadn't even came out yet, so it was like right before Legends hit, and I got hooked immediately. So I was like, I was buying packs and building decks. But him and his friends at the university, they were playing a version they called Highlander, which was just 100 card, no repeat basic lands. So like you could have basic lands, nothing else, and there was no 100 card cap. It could be as big as it was. It was just,
Yeah,
and I think their rule was it had to be at least 3 colors. So anyway, everyone built those for their casual decks. We just threw that together.
damn.
Um, so
It's
like
like,
from the get go, we were kind of playing a multiplayer, casual version of what would eventually be Commander. So when I came back to the game, it was immediately an easy thing to switch
mm,
to. And actually, a couple of years back, my friend that introduced me to the game, he was in town for something, and he brought his deck back, and he pulled enough cards up to get it down to 100. And it was Arcades. The original Arcades was he had in the
yes,
deck, so he made that into his commander. And he
perfect.
he comes to the game shop with me and pulls his deck out and starts like shuffling it like old school, like shuffling. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bridge shuffle.
And like I didn't really think anything of it. He draws his 7 cards, opens like a tropical island into I think Candelabra of Tuanos is what he was the first card, and everyone's like, "Stop! Okay, you need sleeves." So we stopped the pod and went and like grabbed a pack of sleeves and like sleeved his deck up for
It's
him.
like, look, bro, that is $1,200 worth of
Yeah,
card.
he had no clue. He had no idea what the value of anything was because he hadn't played since roughly when I quit too back in the day.
Yeah, I love stories like that when people just pull the things out of their pocket.
Yeah.
They're like, "Look, I don't know if this is worth anything." Throw it at, like, okay. There was a GP in Seattle a couple of years ago that I went to, and I crashed at my friend's house, and they were kind enough to let me stay because they lived very close to the convention center or whatever. And as I was leaving, he's like, "Yo, I found these." Like, my mom told me she had like some cards that she found of mine that were just in the corner, and I figured you'd enjoy them more than I'm like, sure, whatever. I'm never gonna say no. Two full antiquities packs with a candelabra.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I'm just like, and mind you, like mint condition, sat in the
Sure.
corner for 25 years or whatever. And I'm just like, are you? So he gave it to me on the third floor. And like, I was opening, he's like, yeah, just don't look at it right now. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm in the elevator going down. I'm looking over and I just scream so loud. I get a call saying, I heard that. And I'm like, oh, I was like, what the hell, man? He's like, "Eh, it, they're just sat around." And I'm like,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, I guarantee that still there's still so many crazy things in, like,
Yeah.
closets and stuff everywhere.
Seriously, people just
Yeah,
like, "Oh, yeah, I have cards. Hey, you want a Lotus? What the
yeah,
man, Lotus was worth 25 bucks when we were kids. It's still
right,
worth
yeah,
money."
yeah,
Like, it was expensive then. Um, but so the thing, though, is that, like, after in, like, the last 4 or 5 years or something, I feel like you've become such a big like, part of, like, EDHREC and, like, EDHREC being, of course, the biggest repository of everything that, like, people are like, "Oh, it's gonna ruin Commander," and everything. I'm like, "Look, dude, BBS has ruined Magic. EDHREC will ruin Commander. It's fine, we'll survive." But you've become, like, a big voice there. You've been part of the podcast for as long as I can remember,
mhm.
and when did you join that? How did you decide to go from, "Oh, I'm back to Magic," to, "I'm gonna start, like, focusing and devoting my life to 100 card piles?"
So yeah, I started playing again, like I said, when Gatecrash Ish was out, and
Mm,
pretty quickly put together a play group here in town. And there wasn't anyone playing Commander, so we just started like the 3 or 4 guys that I was playing with at that point in time. We just started showing up at an LGS here in town,
mm.
and we like said, okay, well, I guess Tuesday is going to be Commander night, and the 4 of us would just play till the shop closed, and then eventually like people would come in and see like, oh, yeah, I've heard of Commander, and so then there's like 6 people and 8 people and 10 people, and in town here we're at a whole different store, but it's still Commander night, and we probably have in my LGS 80 to 100 people playing on a Tuesday night that show up to play.
Jeez.
And this isn't a big town. We're like 60,000 people or so. I mean, it's a college town, but like it's not
Yeah,
huge, but that's a pretty big Commander night, I
that's a
think.
lot of people for
Yeah,
Tuesday.
right. Yeah. So we started playing at the shop, and the shop I was playing at was like a block from where I worked. And in between, there was this little pizza place where we would go get food before we would go play. So we're sitting around talking Commander, and someone's like, this is basically a podcast every night. We should do a podcast, right? And the joke I made was like, well, yeah, we could probably be the fourth best Commander podcast because there's only 3 of them at that point in time. It was like Command Zone, Commander's Brew, and Commanderin.
Yeah,
In which
yeah,
case, and you popped up shortly around that point in time. I basically for the Kaladesh episode, I think was the
yeah,
one where you guessed
I
it.
got on Commander in 2016.
Okay, which is
Yeah,
roughly when I started Commander Central.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, like, because I remember it's people don't believe me these days, but there was a time when Commanderin was, like, one of the biggest Commander
mhm,
sources in the world
yeah,
because there were literally just a
that
handful
was
of
it.
us, and
Yeah,
we knew everybody,
you're right.
right? Like, and I didn't realize how important that was for me because, like, oh, suddenly I'm a voice on, like, the only Commander show that isn't Josh and Jimmy, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
and it's wild. Now, of course, there's, like, a
Like,
million and
yeah.
one. It's the
So
only way to play it.
so I started doing that show, and then like, well, EDHREC was just taking off at that point in time, and I'm like, since I'm doing this show, we might as well do it right, try to get some publicity. And EDHREC was hiring writers, so I sent in an article to Jason Alt, and he
Mm.
hired me to write there. And I did it kind of so I had for publicity for that show, but I started writing for EDHREC, and like they started to try to do a show. So basically, a bunch of writers tried out. It was that's where Joey was a writer there, Matt was a writer there. So all of the writers basically like did an American Idol kind of situation where we all broke up in different groups and tried recording. And Jason picked the people that he
Thought
thought,
had the most chemistry.
yeah, yeah. So that's where Matt and Joey and I started, and it just kind of like went from there. Like, just right place, right time.
People give Alt a lot of crap, but that man has a very good eye for content,
Absolutely.
and he's got an incredible, like, sense of who would go well together on a podcast and what like, how you can get chemistry and people to actually work together.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, yeah, I'm a big fan of his, but, he keeps trying to get me to write for EDH Rec, and I'm like, "Dude, I don't have the discipline or time to sit and actually just write this crap down. I spend all my words on Twitter, it's fine."
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I really ought to just do something where I get paid, that would be smarter, but where's the fun in
Right. Yeah.
that? Um, yeah, because, like, I I know that, like, when I started, like, really just delving into Commander, and it was weird because, like, Commander had invited me on because 'cause I'd wrote that essay and Prof
Mhm.
posted it everywhere, and I was like, "Sure, I play Commander." I mean, but at the time, I was like, not only was I a casual player the way I am now, but I was, like, casually into Commander, as in, like, I was
Sure.
a drafter and a sealed player who incidentally played Commander because it was here, and getting on that made me have to become a commander person. And
Sure.
that's when I, like, started like, okay, well, where do I go to find commander stuff? Okay, well, here's the EDHREC thing, which is like the one grand repository of everything. I'm like, okay, okay, this is it. Now I know. And like that's how I got exposed to you and like your articles and Jason's articles and all the other people who like became fundamental to me understanding what commander is, beyond just like, oh, take your favorite dude and make a bunch of people in his colors and stick them in the deck. And now I'm like, okay, let me think about what actual synergy means or
Sure.
what it means to have ramp or anything like that. It's weird that I fell into backwards into being like a commander personality and then having to learn afterwards
Sure.
what I
Sure.
was
Sure. Right.
doing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, the it's a strange journey for people to take for sure, because there are folks that definitely get into content creation because they want to create content,
yeah,
and that wasn't what I did. The reason Commander was attractive to me, number one, I kind of had played a similar style multiplayer game, so
sure.
like that made sense, but it was a way to be creative that
Mm,
does you can't really do in other formats. Commander's a one where you can treat a deck as a creative expression,
yes.
and that really doesn't work anywhere else. You can. There's some autonomy you have, but like you're gonna if you show up at a modern event with your cool homebrew, it's probably not going to be a good experience. You could do a lot of that in Commander, which is like was very attractive to me.
Mm,
And when I started at that point in time too, my son was like 5 years old, so I was feeling like I had moved a little bit past the point where that had to be my number one focus was being a dad.
right.
I could drop down to like 90%, you
Yeah.
know? And so I'm like, okay, well, I can start doing this. I'll do this podcast. I can get that will also then give me a creative outlet because I work in IT, which is not the most creatively
Same
fulfilling
and same.
endeavor.
Yeah.
So yeah, so multiple things. It let me Commander is a creative expression, content creation, doing podcasts is a creative expression. So like it turned into a really good outlet for me to like be able to do something that I felt like I was making a thing or expressing myself in a way that I really wasn't able to do prior to that, at least at work or
Yes,
at home.
yes, yes. Like, I mean, that's kind of exactly the same line I got, right? Like, I played Commander and played Magic because at the time I got back into Magic because D&D, my D&D setting, Dragonlance, died. Like, they ended the setting, and I'm like, okay, well, I need some other hobby. I was literally the top echelon of Dragonlance things, dedicated my life to this. It is gone. What else do I do? Oh, I used to play Magic. Okay, I can do this again. But I also worked in like, tech and in like, not creative jobs. And this gives me like podcasting and creating this gives me this outlet that lets me kind of relax and just use a different part of my brain. And especially during lockdown when like, we can't see our friends and I'm a very social person, having an hour long interview chat where I can just force my friends to talk to me is the best thing in the world, right? Um, but the thing like so let me ask you more than like how do I phrase this? Okay, I want to shift gears for a second here and talk about Commander proper. Like, since you've joined EDHREC, like I guess now 4 or 5 years of this, and you've really been like deep in the heart of all these numbers and stats, how do you think it's impacted the game?
It definitely has impacted the game. But I think that can't be helped. So, like, I think back
Mm,
to I played World of Warcraft way back in the day at release, and it was the Wild West. You roll up your character, you put whatever spec you have, you go into whatever dungeon you're fighting, and you're trying to figure out what you figure out.
hmm.
Eventually, however, Wowhead comes out or something, and you can get a statistical breakdown of like this spell per cast deals this much damage with this piece of gear, and that is just going to happen. I don't know how that information is out there, and someone's going to put it together in some form, and it's going
Hmm.
to change the game. It changes the state of World of Warcraft. If you go back and look at WoW, I think that I've looked this up before, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but like the first clear of the first raid, the first Ragnaros kill was like 150 days after release the first
Hmm.
time, and when they released Classic, it was in like hours, like 20
Yeah.
some hours, 30 hours, whatever it was. I don't remember something ridiculous because the information to do those
Yeah.
things is out there. It's going to get aggregated by someone.
Hmm.
EDHREC was the people who did it for Commander, but like those things just occur and you can't stop them. I mean, once people in the NBA figured out how three pointers work, the NBA
Right.
became a 3-point shooting game once that once the information is gathered, it's going to happen. So
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
changed the game was gonna change, someone was gonna do that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we've been around long enough to remember, like, back in the day, Magic, like, yes, we all had our own little metas and our own little things for our towns, but then Scry and Inquest come out and are start telling you about tournament reports in New York and Peoria and
Yeah,
whatever, and you're looking at deck lists, and suddenly we've got, like, the idea of a deck list, and
right.
people are like, "Oh, what cards is this? Oh my god, these things work together," and I remember back in the day, people are like, "Oh, man, all of these, like, net deckers are gonna ruin Magic," and I'm like, yeah, but guess what? That's just how games
Yes.
work. Like, we pass around strategy guides in, like, the '80s to play Nintendo games. It's the exact same way, right? Like, once you learn the right way to beat a boss and you tell everybody else, that's gonna be the way,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
it's going to happen whether you like it or not, I guess,
y
is the way I look at it.
right.
And if anything, maybe it's a little more democratic this way. I you know, somebody like me who was willing to, like, dig back through old sets and look up cards and stuff, 10 years ago probably had an advantage when it came to deck brewing because like
You're gonna
I was
remember.
able yeah, I was doing the work myself to find the information, but like most people can't do that or
Yeah.
don't have the time, don't have the inclination, whatever. They just want to play commander. But like I definitely probably had an edge over most folks back then that now they can go find the information much easier. And that seems more
Well
fair, I think.
well, the thing is, 'cause, like, you when you look at, like, Deck circa 2011, for instance, before the precons came out, before Commander became a thing, you're looking at effectively people would have like like Alara block or Lorwyn block commander, and then just the best draft cards they just have in those colors in a pile
Right.
together. Like, because one of my friends gave like the first commander deck I ever played was a Janara deck. So it was like that three color one that gets like, it can fire breathe or something like that. But the deck itself was like, here's my favorite allies from Zendikar block, plus some random exalted cards I had, plus like Rafik in a prime time because reasons.
Right.
And it was just like, okay, well, this would be a neat sealed deck, I guess, but it's like, what the hell is this pile, right? And now we look at decks that are just like, I'm building around this two card combo, and there are 98 different ways for me to get this combo, and like 40 ways to protect me from like losing this. And I'm like, you guys are just building super synergistic machines. But I mean, I can whine about that all I want, but at the same time, I'm also driving an electric car and not pushing a horse buggy, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Right. Exactly.
um, I think though the one thing I do find a little regretful and annoying is that there is that because EDHREC is an aggregator and it just grabs all the deck lists, and you see the fact that there's people out there who just like churn out deck list after deck list after deck list because they're just iterating or they're just making new ideas, not actually doing it in paper, they're just using the scratch paper. That means that you will look at like a random commander and like the number two card will be like, the stupid blue free counter spell or whatever. And
Right.
it's like, mm,
Yeah, there are no frontiers anymore, and it
yeah.
was super cool when there were frontiers, that can't be helped. But I do miss it absolutely. I can't remember. I think I was talking to Joey on a show one time, and I mentioned that I use this analogy. But go back to World of Warcraft. I remember very in those first couple weeks, there's a zone called Winter Spring. That's a high level zone that was very challenging to get to early on in the game. And I remember one night, late at night, the first 2 weeks of the game, I was able to figure out how to get through this tunnel and get to this zone. And you can do a check to see who else is in the zone at the time, and there was nobody there.
Mm,
And given how early the game was, and I had advanced pretty quickly, I was like, nobody on my server had perhaps even gotten to this point in the game yet. So I was maybe they had, but as far as I could tell, no one was there at that moment at least. That was a really cool thing to experience in that game, was to be the first person to see this place on your server. That there was some of that in Commander for a lot of years, where like people would bust out a card from Alara that you hadn't seen before, and this deck that was a concept that you hadn't considered. That's really gone, and
yeah.
I very much miss seeing those things.
But I mean, part of that is also, hey, guess what? We're aging, right?
Exactly, right. And just like again, information is going to be accumulated, and that's just because I miss it, but like it
Yeah.
is what it is. That's the
I
price you
mean, I
pay
too
for.
miss being young, right? Like,
Yes,
I
right,
miss
exactly.
like 90% of that is like, look, dude, I can't unlearn the things I've learned. I
Right, yeah,
can't sit there and say like, okay, I'm going to build a deck like it was 1995, and I'm using Dak and Blackblade as my like
yeah,
commander or whatever. Because real talk, if I go and grab Janara and I'm building a Janara deck, I'm going to put the best Bant cards I know. I'm
Yeah,
not just going to sit and grab random pile of crap, right? And so I think ultimately we come to terms with what is EDHREC here for? It's here because somebody has to do it, and you might as well just have all the information in one place
yeah,
so we can at least have a source of truth to debate off of, right? Like, yeah, you can be mad that every slicer deck now has like Dockside and Jessica's Will or whatever, but at least we know that
right.
what's going on, and then we can at least sit there and say, like, hey, maybe I think, like, for me, the thing that I find most helpful is like when I'm thinking about a commander and I'm looking like, oh, I wonder if this card is too strong for the power level that I want to play at. And I'll just go throw it into EDHREC and I'll look at and see what the most popular cards that go with this are. And then I'll realize what are the people who are actually playing this card doing? And I'm like, oh, maybe that's not what I want to be doing. Maybe I should look somewhere else. Or, hey, this is exactly the space I want to play around in. Fine, let's go. It acts as both as a way to build your decks in like, yeah, if you want to build the most optimal pile of cards, you can go there and get the average deck that's there,
Right.
but that's not going to be very fun. But also you can sit there and say like, look, I didn't realize this powerful card works here. But you can also sit there and say like, okay, I'm going to use cards that are not on this list and see what happens.
The limiter has changed from the limiter years ago was people just didn't have the information. So like that was what kept the power level of decks balanced out.
Yeah.
That has changed to the point today where the limiter is the conversation you have looking for the game you want.
Yes.
And while that's maybe slightly less convenient, I've heard plenty of folks complain about having to have a real zero conversation, although they tend to exaggerate how difficult the other thing that is to do. I don't think it's that complicated.
Dude,
But
literally, you got to sit down and say like, "Yo, this is my slow deck and this is my fast deck. What do we want
yeah,
to play?" It's
yeah,
not that hard.
it just doesn't seem that hard to me. But like, so that's now where you have those power limits is in the conversation versus people just not knowing these combos exist or these cards exist or whatever, and that's probably healthier.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it feels like we now have this like kind of, at least we have a basis for conversation. Like
Right,
we
right,
have at
right.
least a baseline level that we can all understand is the language we're speaking. And that means that, like, yeah, I can do foolish things like, look, I'm using Monocrypt to power up Mahamodi Jin, but I also realize that Monocrypt is a signifier for high power, and I know what I'm doing when I get into it, right? Um, could you? I
It-
guess that's the thing. You don't have the excuse anymore to be able to sit there and say, like,
right.
I didn't know this is too strong.
And maybe I've gotten lucky.
Mm,
I will entirely acknowledge that's a possibility. But both locally where I play and when I go to events, and when I travel for work, sometimes I'll just stop at LGS and like find a pickup game. Um, I very rarely these days have bad experiences.
yeah, it's gotten way better.
Yeah, everyone has good conversations, and they're like, "Oh no, you're playing this. Let me swap this deck out for this one." Occasionally things happen like that. I've had bad experiences, but like 95% of the time, everyone's open to having the conversation and everyone's honest, and that's better than it was. There
Yeah,
was I experienced less pub stomping today than I did 8 or 10 years ago.
like for all that we poo poo CDH, the idea that it exists gives us language,
Yeah,
and it says that, like, look, man, if you want to play high power stuff, okay, I didn't bring a high power deck, so I'm just gonna find a different group to play with, or can I borrow one of yours? And then like the pub stomper gives you their deck, and now they're not pub stomping because we're all at the same tier, right? And like for instance, I keep coming back to this story I tell about GP Seattle of I sat down with my soldiers deck, which was at that time like a 4 if I was going to give it a generous grade. And I'm
sure.
sitting down with proto CDH decks that I had no idea they were using like Leovold and like wheels or like infinite turns or all these things that are just broken. And it was the worst possible mismatch. And I used to think, I mean, look at these high power guys ruining my game. And I'm like, wait, I was a dude who sat down at an established groups table and pulled out like, a candy bar. And these guys are playing roller, like, playing like destruction derby. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm the problem here. And it would have been solved very easily now if I just
Sure.
sit there and say, like, hey guys, what game are we playing? Right. Like,
Right, yeah, like because they didn't want to play a deck that couldn't hang with them too,
no,
probably. So right,
they just felt really bad that they were crushing me, right? Like, you don't
yeah,
want
it
that.
it, it goes, yeah, it's For the most part, folks just want a game that's competitive and is fun to play, and that is the same really no matter what power level folks are playing at.
Yeah.
And people have gotten much more self-aware of that kind of thing, I think. Um, the biggest struggle I kind of encounter nowadays um, is power evaluation gets tricky, I think.
Yes.
Particularly, I think for myself, or and this is probably true of you and people like anyone in the content creation sphere too. I think we're probably for the most part so involved in Commander that like our pile of cards that looks like someone else's pile of cards doesn't necessarily play like someone else's pile of cards. So like there's
Mhm.
issues like that that like you need to work out because I'm have definitely noticed particularly in recent years I have to be very cautious of that because I'll sit on the deck and I'll be like, oh, it looks very similar to that person's deck, but it's not going to be because I've spent so much time tinkering with this list and I know enough about Commander as a whole that like it's going to play differently in my hands than it's going to play in someone else's hands.
Yeah,
So
but the other people are gonna sit there and say like, "Bro, you started with a crypt on turn 1." And you're gonna
sure,
like,
yeah.
"Yeah."
Well, or even not like even if I
Or
you know I don't run crypt in a deck. I don't really run tutors, but I tend to bake so much synergy into my decks with how they play that like it doesn't matter. My decks
yeah.
look maybe weaker because I'm not running things like crypt and I'm not running tutors, but for the most part they're not. I'm still going to be able to hang with those decks because I, I fiddle with this stuff so much that just
Yeah.
the information that I have access to just gives me an edge. Like it's just the reality of it.
So, let's build off of that for a second. If you wanted to start and build a brand new commander, what are the things you reach for? Because like you and me, we're the type of people we have to make a billion decks just for a part of our jobs, part of the thing we do. And I like to ask people who are like deeply invested creators, where do you start? Like, do you have
So
like a template in your head, or do you just kind of like
I
build
I,
based on instinct?
I do, but I'm a very slow deck builder.
Mm,
I have something has to speak to me. I don't build a deck because like, oh, I want to try this new
hmm.
commander out. I almost always start with a concept and then build a deck around the concept I came up with.
Yes.
And very often I spend like months and months tinkering with decks before I even put it together. I'll throw like a list together and come back to every few days and like move a few cards in and out and like, that doesn't feel right. Let me let it sit for a week or a month or whatever. So I that's not probably helpful. I don't think for most people. I don't think most people want to be nearly that ridiculous about how they brew. Um, I used to post pictures on Twitter. I would do like when I would finally build a deck, I would put like a big murder board up, like put the decks on it, and like run like strings between them. Not, I don't really brew that way. It was just kind of as a joke, but not really. Kind of, I didn't like literally do that, but like in my head, I do that. So I'm not probably the best person to try to mirror if you're looking to brew. But yeah, I definitely like have when I sit down when I finally figure out the concept. So most recently, the deck I one of my most recent one was Jalira, who's the one of the background commanders from
Oh, right, right,
um,
right.
yeah,
From Baldur's Gate
Baldur's Gate, where you can tap tokens to basically
to
make
make
them like
mono
run anywhere
dorks,
else.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the reason I built that deck and I paired it with Agent Iron Throne, which is the black background where if you sacrifice something, you can ping a damage,
Hmm.
was I wanted to build an Eldrazi Spawn and Scion deck.
Yes.
And I've been trying to figure out how to do that for years. I'm like, I can run every terrible Eldrazi that makes Spawn and Scions because
Oh, I
that would be
love this.
funny.
Look,
And
man,
so
I still
that
play Awakening Zone. I don't
Thinking
care. I
Zone's
love
awesome.
that
I love
card.
that card. Yeah, absolutely. So like I wanted to put all of those things in a deck. So I spent and that was the kind of thing I spent years in the back of my head being like, okay, whenever some Golgari thing would come out, I'd be like, would that kind of work for a Spawn and Sign deck? I'm like, not really, not what I want to do. Jalira and Asian Iron Throne work perfect for that. So like then I had okay, so I have this commander that will work with the concept I want. So I threw the cards in the list, and then I spent a couple months moving things in and out before I finally put it together in paper. But so that's the process for me. I'll have an idea, and then I'll just like spend a lot of time
Mm.
just thinking about what would work and make the idea something that I could realize in paper.
Yeah, like when I come up across like a commander or an idea that I want to build, I will sit on it for like months and just
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
meditate on this card and be like, I've got this stupid pile of cards over here that's blue green Simic deck that I've wanted to build since literally 2010. And I've just been like, I don't have the right commander or something hasn't spoken to me to trigger making me do it. but eventually I'll get there, and this stupid Pearl Lake agent that's sitting on my desk will find a home. Uh,
Oh, that's the
like,
best. But when you find it, it's the
oh
best.
my god, dude, let me tell you, the last deck I just built was, Krav and Regna, so Orzhov deck based on my Crested Sunmare. Like, I'd been trying to build a Crested Sunmare deck since, like, Amonkhet and,
Sure.
like, using Teysa and all these things, and I was like, "Here, I finally did it, I finally found the life gain deck I wanna do. I put this thing together, I feel so good about it now." It's like, it's finally I can clear this, like, you
Yes, it's
know
out of my head. I've
exactly.
I'm able
I
to
can just
remove that from my
close this
brain.
tab and call
Yeah,
it good
yeah.
and move on to the next one. Um, Speaking of which, given now that we have 12,000 commanders, which is like just so too
Oh,
many,
yeah.
too many. But how do you like what speaks to you now? Like, what are you
So
looking to
one thing
do?
I will note about the too many commanders thing though, it actually kind of does. I mentioned before how there's no frontiers anymore.
Oh yeah, no, it straight takes us right back to the Wild West.
It
People
does a
sit
little bit,
down.
right?
Yeah,
So
people
like,
sit down and you're like, I have no idea what the hell that is. And they're like, oh, this was the third commander from the Strixhaven box. I'm like,
yeah,
what? What? I don't even
th-
know.
there was this window there where when we were getting 5 sets a year with like 6 or 8 legends per set, where you knew what every one of them did,
Yep.
and three of them would be good. So like the people in my shop would build there'd be like 5 or 6 people that built those decks with those
Mm,
3 or 4 good commanders. So you would see them, you know how the deck would play. You knew what everything was.
right.
Nowadays, yeah, I can't think of the last time in a single like day of playing Commander where I've ran across the same commander multiple times.
Isn't that
And there
weird?
and there are plenty of times where I'm like, I literally like joke and say, "Is that a real card or did you make that up?" Because like and I write about this stuff and talk about it, and there are still cards where I'm like, I don't remember that being a commander.
And that
Imagine
came
how
out
it is,
3 weeks ago, and it
right?
was in your draft deck, and you're like,
Right.
"I don't know what to do."
Imagine how it is for people who don't do this kind of stuff for on podcasts and articles. It's
Right?
insane.
It's
So
completely bananas to me, especially, like, because you can sit there and think about it, like, if you think about Dominaria from 5 years ago, yeah, there was, like, 150 legends or whatever in that set, but there were, like, 10 playable ones, like,
right, yeah.
your Muldrothas and Slimefoots and whatever, and Joda maybe, but now you look at Dominaria United or, like, Brothers War or something, and suddenly there's, like, every 3rd legend is, like, commander playable, and you're like, "I don't know." It's like, "Do you remember Baby Urza?" It's like, "What? Baby Urza? What the hell are you talking about, Baby Urza?" Oh
Wait,
my god.
I forgot we had 3 different Urzas in the same set.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
That was
But to
last week.
your question, when we get so many commanders, how do I decide to build? I usually number one, an old habit of mine from those periods in time when like everyone would build the Cranko or whatever it was that came out that set. Um, I didn't like that thing where I would build the
Mm,
deck and then there'd be a bunch of them in the shop. So I had this habit where I'm like, I'm just not going to even look at a commander till it's been out for like 6 or 8 months. So I still kind of do that. I
mm,
still wait till this window has passed. So I actually don't really even, for the most part, look at commanders from a new set as something I want to brew around. I usually give them a little bit of time to sit. I'm like, okay, this isn't something one of my friends built or someone I play regularly built or
mhm.
that I'm going to encounter. Now I'll consider if I want to brew it or not. And
Yeah.
then I also am like, okay, well, what is the card telling me to do, and how can I find a way to not to do something different that it's telling me, but also have that be effective. So like I do a lot of that too.
Okay, actually, that's an interesting question because, like, Quad 9 posted this, link the other day where she was like, of the 180 commanders that, like, exist that let you draw a card, 144 of them were printed in the last 3 years, right? Like, or some stat to that effect. And I was just sitting there, I'm like, damn, that's true. Like every other commander is literally perform a game function or do the set mechanic, draw a card. And back in the day, we used to be like, well, this guy's here for the colors because it's not doing a damn other thing.
Yeah, right.
Um, and it's hard to find like a reason to, or it's like, it's hard to differentiate between some of these things because they're all just like card advantage engines.
I
Where was I
think
going with
design
this?
has gotten a little better about that in the last year or two, but there
Hmm.
was definitely a window there where like it felt like they were printing some
Tulane.
commanders. Yeah, and I get why that's an attractive commander to somebody, particularly if you're a new player. That's it's amazing.
It's
But it's also probably better than every commander you can run in band for the most part, unless like you specifically want to play walls and Arcades or something. It's just going to probably do like if you were playing a band Angel tribal deck with Janara, Tulane's probably still better.
Yeah, Tulane is basically the goalless problem. It's better than
Yeah,
any commander you can have
yeah.
in that color combo. Even you could do a mono white Tulane deck and it would still be better than whatever mono white deck you're building, right? Like it was broken, and it was like eminence tier broken. And I think if it had stayed popular, we probably would have gotten chopped. But I think people just got bored of it and were like,
Yeah, it seems that way.
it's like Tatyova. It just draws cards
Yeah.
because you draw cards, whatever. Like I miss when we had commanders like Gahiji Honored One, right? Like just like force your dudes to attack other people, and they don't draw any cards; they just get a little bigger. It's like it's fine,
To make you and then you had to find a way to find those advantages. Like you
right?
had to it forced you to do some work.
And use weirdo bad
Yeah,
cards.
which and to be fair, just because I enjoy that doesn't mean everyone else does. So I
Sure,
understand they want to make this stuff accessible to people who aren't as invested as I
yeah.
am.
There
So I get
obviously
it.
not everybody's going to be like you or I,
Correct.
but the thing is, though, for instance, like the deck that I built last summer, that's been one of my favorite decks now, for Mazzy True Sword Paladin from Baldur's Gate. Um, and she basically let me. Her gimmick is, play auras on other people, and when they attack things, they get +2/+0 and trample or whatever. But also, like when your aura dies, you can recycle it and recast it, and that let me use all these weirdo cards from like Aura Tog. Suddenly, I
Sure.
can
Right.
keep my own auras and then replay them and draw cards and stuff. And it lets me. It's like it feels like at some point I must have told myself they're taking away all the hoops to jump through. So I'm now going to build myself hoops to jump through.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that comes back to the thing talking about trying to balance your game knowledge as a content creator with somebody else too. By
Mhm.
I found I like by putting artificial roadblocks in my own way. That helps with that problem as well. By like,
Yeah.
I'm going to this is this particular rule set. Like all of my decks have some particular rule set.
Mm.
So my Glissa deck, I only run Death Touch creatures. It doesn't matter if something else is good in that deck or interacts well with Glissa. Silvok Replica, when I was playing Glissa the Trader, is it a creature you can sacrifice to plus? It's an amazing card in Glissa, but it doesn't have Death Touch. So like I would limit myself to like only Death Touch creatures in that deck.
My
When
Tajik deck has only soldiers, and every
yeah,
time they print a great white card that's a knight or a cleric,
it feels so bad.
oh
Yeah,
god, it's like, come on, throw me a
yeah.
bone. Yeah.
So like I've dragons are super cool. I've always wanted to build a dragon deck. I have two dragon decks currently, and neither one of them have red. One is Selesnya and one is Demir. Like
Did you build that Symmetry Scarzem deck or whatever?
no, I didn't. I actually have a Silumgar Drifting Death deck that I had way before Symmetry came out. Even
Man,
it's like I've been playing a Demir and a Selesnya dragon deck for quite a while because I wanted
Selesnya dragons? Who the
yeah
hell's running Selesnya dragons?
Dromoka the Eternal that has
Mm,
the bolster trigger.
both, yeah, yeah. Man, Dromoka. G Man, Khan's block was a wonderland.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, that's the thing, like, I really wanna build a dragons deck. I have a Joda 5-color all Elder Dragons deck, which is just like every Elder Dragon I can think of, but then I was like, "Oh, look at all these cool dragons in Baldur's Gate, maybe I'll build one." Miriam is broken, and,
yeah,
like, the
yes,
fear of being unfun levels of broken,
yeah,
and the friggin' new Rith or Dargaz or whoever the hell it was, from Dominaria is also, like, all your dragons get Ward 4. I'm like, "That's not fun."
yeah.
That's just mean, man. Like, that's just it makes me irritable when these things are, like, just, like, too good. I'm like, I wanted a medium good commander. I don't want, like I'm like it feels like, "Hey, look, you've wanted this thing for a long time. Let me give you the best possible iteration."
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
"Cool it, bro. We can
And
get to there."
it becomes unsatisfying for me,
Mm,
like, winning a game with a Selesnya Dragons deck or something, I feel like I had to jump through enough hoops and I had to work at that to get to that win, um, where that I wouldn't feel if I was playing Miriam or something, and that's no disrespect to somebody who loves playing Miriam, I don't wanna
no, Miriam is amazing, but
yeah,
it's
no
just not what the game I want.
and if you think that's fun, that's no slight on you, but it's not what I want from the game. I want
Yeah.
to have to feel like I worked to get that win. I had to do something cool, and that it makes it's a much more enjoyable experience for me.
Yeah. Like, I mean, at the risk of sounding like a get off my lawn, it's like it's not that because like I am glad that there's so much choice that people can play literally whatever they
For
want.
sure.
Like we're in a world now where you can go any strategy and there's going to be a good card for it. But I just also like having to like play the tricks on myself to make it silly.
Yeah.
You know, Miriam's so stupid. That card makes me mad. Um,
At Richmond at the event, where we were at, we
yeah,
got to hang out a little bit in person for like literally for the first time.
yeah.
I got Miriam in my draft kit, and it was felt fundamentally unfair to
Isn't
have
it
that in the
just
draft I played.
broken, that card?
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
like, so messed up, and the Teamer Dragons in that set were so good. Like, okay, you
Oh,
know what? I will say this, if you build a sealed deck out of just Commander Baldur's Gate, and it has Miriam as your commander, that could be rad. But
it was super. It was fun, but it
yeah,
definitely like I had a pretty big edge playing that.
yeah, you did.
Yeah,
I mean, my pool had Ancient Silver Dragon, so I'm not complaining.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah,
Um, I think though one of the things I've grumbled about to WotC folks is like, look, it's not fair when you guys build a precon that is better than any deck I can possibly put together.
yeah.
Like my zombies deck, I've painstakingly slapped together for 10 years. You guys put out Wilhelt, which is just automatically better than my entire decade of scrounging to make this thing work, or
Yeah,
like the
there
Sea
was,
Serpent or whatever.
and I feel like in the last couple of years they said I think they've addressed that probably since they've had that. Is it
Yeah,
the casual magic?
yeah, the new panel or
Yeah, yeah.
no, the what's it? It's a casual play design.
There we go. Yep. And I think since that's been a thing, I definitely think they've pulled back a little bit on cards that do all the things for you. But
Yes.
there was certainly a window there where I wonder if there wasn't a fundamental misunderstanding of what commander players wanted.
If you wanna know what I think that they had a time there where a bunch of tournament grinder spikes who were working at WotC were like, "Okay, we gotta make commander cards. What do commander players want? Huh, these games are taking way too long. What if they just give them acceleration on turn 2?
Yeah,
Or like,
right.
maybe we'll
Yeah.
just put out Dockside, it'll be fine. Like, the lower players won't play it." I'm like, "Oh god, dude." Yeah, and I think
And if
that
you're a tournament grinder, I get why your brain works that way.
right, like, you're just optimizing, you're like,
Yeah.
"Look, of course you wanna have the best possible deck, why wouldn't you?" And then people are like, "No, the commander experience is beer and peanuts and chilling,
Right.
not like I'm trying to turbo through you to get to the next round." And once they realized that, I think they shifted back, and now we get commanders that explore interesting in different areas,
Yes.
and it's gotten way cooler. And I think, like, there's just so much like, in the last 2 years, there have been so many interesting weirdo commanders, and people will sit down in front of you and play, like, a Guillaume Chef's deck or something, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Ah, let's go. This feels like the Wild West again. I love it." Um, I don't know. Commander's, like, in a weird place, but I think it's going in the right direction.
I feel like it is too. There was a window where, like I said, a couple of years back where I was concerned about the proliferation of those Muldrotha style commanders,
Mm,
the Corvalds, and I felt like if I sat down against those decks, I was immediately at a huge disadvantage just by virtue of what the commander I was playing versus what that commander was going to do. They were just so obviously powerful in the zone and so effortlessly powerful too. Like it didn't really require much to get the power from those commanders. That I was like, oh, this isn't a place I want to be playing necessarily. And if this is the future of Commander, I'm not too wild about it.
mhm,
But then I think they definitely did ratchet that back, and we're not getting those level of commanders. And the player base as a whole has ratcheted that back, I think, or at least if you wanted that experience, you've moved into maybe the CEDH field where like that's a thing that everyone's doing, and so it seems to have course corrected at least to more of a style of game that I like playing.
mm. Yeah, that I think that's right, and I think the fact that we have communication and the fact that people are
Yes.
now more willing to sit there and say, like, "This is the game I want." It's made
Mhm.
it better for everything, right? Like, I think just like the rules committee going out there and saying like, "Hey guys, if we just talk for like 10 seconds before we play, everybody will be much happier."
Yeah.
And it's worked.
Yeah, absolutely has. Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I think we're aiming in the right direction these days. Like, design is
And
starting to settle down. People
yeah,
aren't playing stupid cards.
and we've only been like Rule Zero stuff came out, and then people started having that conversation, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So there weren't a lot of in-person games for a window, and now we're just kind of, not that COVID doesn't exist, it still is an
Yeah,
issue, but like people are getting back out there and playing and have been for the last year-ish, and that will continue to ramp up. Um, but the rule zero conversation is still, despite having been out for a few years, person to person is still relatively new. So I think
yeah,
people have gotten much better, and will be at an even better place 2 years from now than we are today, as people have gotten even more used to
yeah.
doing it and more accustomed to having that talk.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like people had basically 2 years to sit and think about this and think
Yeah, yeah,
like you got nothing else to do. And if we're going to be
right.
playing Commander and we're engaged, well, let's chew on what it means to play Commander. And nowadays, people I think are just like feeling like, look, getting to play in person is a privilege that we didn't have, and I don't want to waste this time.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Like it definitely feels a little bit like, look, I want to make sure that this time is the best possible time I can spend. And if that means we're playing tournaments of CDH, rad. If that means we're playing, you know, pillow fighting with like crappy legends vanilla creatures, let's go. Or
As
like
long as we're
Baru.
playing, that's what
Yeah,
I like.
right.
At this point, as long as we're playing, that's what I care about.
Exactly. Just make sure we're all like, and everybody's got a deck for everything, so it's fine. And if you
Yeah.
don't, the other person will give you one.
Right.
No, no problem, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
The
I think
community has really is been impressive too, to see in the last, since I started, to where it is today, the Commander community. Because like I remember going to events, in 2015 ish era,
mm.
and to play a game of Commander, you could find people, but like you're playing on the food tables and like hoping there's no ketchup, or you're trying to play on the numbered tables where, yeah, we hope we can finish the game before they kick off a draft or something here and
Yeah,
we get
before the
bumped.
judge throws you out.
Exactly right. And again, now you go to an event, and that's amazing to be able to go to an event and have hundreds of people looking to play Commander in a contained area where you don't have to move when there's judges. And
It's the weirdest thing in the world.
yeah, but it's such a great experience, and particularly after not having it during the start of
Yeah.
COVID for a year, to be able to go back and do those things again. So, like, Minneapolis is coming up here in 5-ish weeks, and
Oh god.
I cannot wait to go to that event. Like, I'm so excited.
I am going to Richmond again for the Command Fest,
Okay.
and then I'm still thinking about Minnesota because like it's expensive and things and stuff. But like I went to Philly and Philly was amazing, right? Like Philly was absolutely what I was looking for. And you're right, like because I remember like the last GPs or stuff before lockdown when Commander was still just kind of inching its way forward,
Just
like
starting
at
out, yeah.
Vegas, and we get like the little bit of room and in like Reno and whatever. And then 2020 was going to be the year of Commander, and it turned out to be the year of Commander, but not the way we thought it would be.
Right, right.
It's like the spell table Commander.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know, man. It's like it feels now that we've come out of our hibernation and it feels just way cooler. It's more interesting, and I don't know. I mean, yeah, we yell at each other a lot on Twitter, but that's also just Twitter.
That's Twitter. Right, exactly,
Like
exactly.
that's what we're here for. But when you actually sit down to play with people, I think it's just a much happier place to be.
It's the best. I mean, I was checking. I log the games I play,
Mm,
because I do. I've played 75 games so far this year. I'm like,
damn,
I can't. I'm like, I'm gonna hit 300 this year. I'm gonna play 300
Jesus,
games of Commander, and I'll write an article about it or something. But like, and that feels so good to be able to just play that many games with different people and different
right?
decks and different faces. And yeah,
And the fact that all those decks are going to be different, and you're never
yeah,
going to know what any of these commanders are because they came out in some
yeah, right.
supplemental set. And you're like,
But
I don't know.
and when you go to those events too, and someone is excited to show you their toy, this is
That is
this
the
thing I
best.
built. That feels so good to see
Oh my god.
someone who's like, you're someone who show they've listened to, and they are there to share this thing with you. That's
Oh,
the
I
best
love it.
experience. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I think Richmond is like the first time I went to an event. I mean, like Vegas, I guess before that. Like without like I think Vegas and Reno was right when the CAG started. But like Richmond was the first time I went as somebody. And
Sure.
as like or like
Yeah, same
these
here.
events where I'm going there as like actually people know who I am and care. And people would come up to me and show me their decks or talk to me or let me. It's like, dude, I want you to play this deck because I want you to see what it's like. And I'm like, or like at Orlando Command Fest and stuff like that. It's just, it's the best feeling. And people are like coming out there and they're not terminally online like we are. They're just sitting here
Right.
and they want to just show you this weird ass brew that they put together. And it is the sweetest feeling. It is
Yeah.
so much fun to watch people because nothing makes a person happier than to share the thing that makes them happy.
Sharing their joy with you is
Yes.
such a yeah,
I love it,
so
man. It's like that's what I'm here for. I want to see your weirdo crazy town
yeah,
stuff. Like I don't care what's in it. I just want to know why you put it there.
yeah,
And that's cool. Like
yeah.
I love that. Just don't beat me with it and we'll be
Right, right.
fine.
Exactly, exactly. Share your joy, but, like,
Yeah.
share
She's like, "Do you wanna play?" I'm like,
if you miss a couple land drops, that's probably okay too.
yeah, it's fine."
Right.
Um, wow, man, an hour went by. That was a very fast
Oh,
hour. I
wow.
didn't even feel like that.
Yeah, that flew.
Yeah, dude. I don't know. I really enjoyed talking to you because I like you. I like a lot of the philosophy that you espouse, and I like a lot of the cards and ideas that you bring up. And it does it's really nice to see other people kind of walking in the same like we're here for fun space that like I want to. And I don't want to. I mean, people get mad when I say we're here for fun. But like, I don't mean that your way of playing is not fun
Sure.
or the competitive is not fun or whatever. But I mean like people who just want to play kitchen sink magic, or like play like box of cards magic where you just
Right.
flip over whatever, and like I think of cards like Stibbs. Like when Stibbs builds decks, his decks are always just super weird, like Mercadian masks on commons or something that do crazy nonsense, or like silver border stuff or whatever. Like I want to celebrate the weird half of Magic, and not just have the same 45, like 65 cards that everybody else does, right? Like, yeah, it's fine.
And it's also it's a trickier space too in terms of like content creation, because it's very easy to, at least from the CEDH perspective or the competitive perspective, to talk about the best.
Yeah,
This interaction is the best interaction. You
sure.
can kind of mathematically prove that, and there's a conversation to be had if you want to talk about those numbers and break down those statistics and like that. Easy isn't the right word, but like there's a clear path to have that. If
Yes.
you're talking about casual stuff, it's way more nebulous when you want to
Yeah.
like engage with someone about that.
It turns out it's very easy to tell somebody what a 9 is, but to tell someone what an 8 is, like,
Right.
impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, people have, like, wildly different ideas. It's like, when did you start playing Magic? What are the cards that made your formative years? Those are the cards that you're gonna go grab f to build this stupid deck out of, and then you're gonna be like, "Okay, well" I don't know. I mean, I love to see it, and I love to see what people come up with, and that's why I also bring decks that I tune higher than I would want to play, because I realize that where I want to play is not where anybody else wants to play.
Sure.
Uh, but so it goes. I have to at least prove my worth sometimes, because there are definitely people who sit down and try to play me and be like, "All right, Mister CAG guy, let's see how good you are." And I'm like,
Certainly.
"Look, I'm the casual representative on the CAG. I don't know what you want from
It
me."
it's so funny. So I've definitely run into those folks that like want to say they beat, the person beat
Oh
EDHREC.
yeah,
Like I ran into those games, but I've also run into ones where like this happened at Salt Lake City one time. A group of three guys came up to me and they're like, "Hey, could we play a game with you? We like your stuff." I'm like, "Sure." Like, what deck should I play? What power level? And they're like, well, we want to play your Reki History of Kamigawa deck. Can you play that? I was like, well, it's relatively powerful. Like, they're like, no, no, but we want you to stomp us with that deck. Like, like they wanted to see the deck, and they're
well,
like,
yeah.
it was very much like a beat me daddy kind of situation, and it was a
Well, it's
super
also
fun game. But
yeah.
like they want to see it pop off. Like that's what they were there to do. I'm like, all
Exactly.
right,
Well, I mean, think about it. If we've got decks that are our signature decks, like people always ask me, like, dude, are you going to bring your soldiers deck to blah? And I'm like, well, it's kind of heavy. It's a big, thick box and all fancy cards, but everybody still wants to see it. They
right, right,
all,
yeah,
because they're like, look, I've heard so much about this. I want to
yeah.
see it and play. And that just feels good. It's a
Yeah,
really
right.
cool feeling. It's like,
Well, because as much as we enjoy people sharing their joy with us, like we want to do the same thing now. Like we want to share our thing with somebody else. The thing that we've spent years crafting and building, like we want to share that off as well.
yeah,
It's yeah,
I don't know. I think the community is the best part of Commander, and that
absolutely, 100%.
like I think being able to go back in person and see people has just made it so much nicer. I don't
Yeah,
know, man. But, I think that's a good place for us to call this a day. It's been a
I agree.
great talk, Dana. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate it. This was a good
Yeah.
conversation. You're always fun to talk to,
I you
and
know,
you should come to Minneapolis. We'll hang out
dude,
if you can make it work.
I desperately wanna come, but, we will see. Uh, But that said, if people wanted to find you or your shows or whatever, where could they go?
EDHREC airs every Friday. You can find us on YouTube, or I think the podcast version is available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Mhm.
I just wrapped up my show Commander Central, episode 350. We were able to like go on our own terms. We did 350 episodes, and everyone was like, we've kind of hit the point where we're happy.
Mm.
So we just wrapped it up a couple weeks back. So that one's done, and I'm writing articles for EDHREC. Whenever I get around to it, I've gotten a little bit lazy in my old age. I'm doing enough podcast content and stuff and streaming that I every couple months I do one nowadays versus I
Yeah.
once upon a time I was doing weekly articles.
Dude, when you look back on those things, it's just like how was I coming up
Oh
with a
man,
weekly content for
yeah,
Commander? It's like
yeah,
there's a reason I was shifted to an interview show, man. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't just think about only Commander all the time.
yeah.
But speaking of that interview show, as always, you can find me at Gearpuri Gears, and you can find the show anywhere podcasts are sold or at Cool Stuff Inc. every Tuesday. And on YouTube every Tuesday. Thank you to my editor, EK. And remember, my friends, it's not magic without the gathering, and we will see you next time.